Hi there, Nina. I see you joined. Awesome. Hi, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Fine, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Can you
Awesome.
see me?
Yes, and thank you so much for
Perfect.
taking the time to join. I appreciate it. And
No problem.
hopefully, we'll get a few more people to join in, and I will save it so anyone who missed it live can go and watch the replay.
Okay, great. That's amazing. I cannot see myself, so I don't know if I don't know if I cannot be.
Oh,
It's completely black for me. I see you, and then I see just a
oh,
black square below you. So if I'm not,
oh.
if you cannot see me properly, just let me know if I need to reposition myself or something.
Yeah. Do you want to exit and come back in and maybe that would
Okay, I
help
can.
or okay,
Okay, I
I'll
can.
wait.
I
I'll
can
wait
try
for you.
that. Okay.
Cool.
Okay. No, it's the
I
same, but it's
oh
okay. Okay, let's
okay.
just do it like this.
Well,
It's fine. I'm
I can see your face
okay.
and a little bit of your collar, so that's
Okay.
good because
Okay.
these screens cut off a part of the image anyway. Because when we're
Yeah.
sharing screen, yeah, so I can see your face perfectly. So the only thing I would suggest is if you lower the camera a teeny tiny bit because it's
Okay.
cutting your there. Oh, perfect,
Okay.
perfect. Oh,
Okay. Great.
perfect. And
Yeah, so we'll
thanks
do
so
it a
much.
bit like this.
Awesome.
If I'm ever moving too much, just let me know and I'll reposition the camera.
Don't worry. And thanks so much for everyone else who's joining. And if you would let us know in the comments where you're joining in from, that would be cool to see where people are located nowadays. So I want to thank you, Nina, for taking the time to join. And I know that we have a full agenda here in terms of topics, and I pinned the summary on the bottom so we can just jump right in.
Great.
So first, I would super love for you to share with us how your vegan journey started over the years, please.
Many years, really. That's the right word. I first went vegetarian when I was about 12 years old or something. And then after a few months, my mother was not very happy with that anymore. I think back then it was not very well known, and I think she was a bit worried. She didn't really say what the problem was, but at some point she was like, "As long as you live under my roof, you're going to eat the food that I tell you to eat."
I
So
can
I had to get
relate.
back to. Really, you had the
Oh, but
same
I was
story?
older than you. I was in my late
Okay.
teens.
Okay, okay. So I had to go back to eating meat without wanting to. And then when I turned 18, I was like, okay, I can go vegetarian again. But by then, I wasn't really into going full vegetarian anymore. So I was taking it step by step. I was like, okay, I'll just cut out all the red meat because it was
Yeah.
more of a, I mean, I did like animals and I knew that eating them wasn't right. But I also thought that it would be healthier to not eat red meat. So that was that was the first step that I took.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then after a few months, I was like, okay, you know what? I don't really need to eat chicken or anything either. It doesn't really make much sense. I'm not eating it that much. And then another few months later, it was the fish where I was like, okay, I eat fish like every few weeks, so I might as well cut it out completely. There is really no point. It's not like, oh no, but I need to have my fish every few weeks, you know? So then I just stopped eating fish as well, and then from then I was vegetarian. Um, and I had a vegan in my class actually, and
Oh, wow.
back then, yeah, and she was the only vegan. It wasn't really something that I knew of at the time.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
So for me, that was like, wow, okay, there's a vegan person, but I thought it was extreme, you know. I thought, oh, these vegans, they're going too far. What's the problem with drinking milk and cheese? I mean, the animals are still alive. And also, I'm from a smaller town where a lot of the people in my school were from the surrounding villages, and some people had like dairy farms and egg
Yes.
farms, and all of them were saying that no, this is they need this. You need to milk the cows because otherwise it's not good for them. And you know, all this stuff that, you know, later you find out that this is not true, but they actually believed it. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so much in this whole industry themselves that they also believe what they're being told. It's not that they just make up a lie to lie to you. They actually believe it. So veganism was not an option for me at all for many years. And then I think I was in my late 20s when I found out about what happens to male chicks in the egg industry. And I was like, okay, no, I mean, I cannot be
Oh,
vegetarian because animals are being killed. And then I eat eggs where animals are also being killed, right?
exactly.
So,
As a byproduct of getting the
yeah,
eggs to us. Exactly.
exactly. So I stopped, and I was okay with it because I never really liked eggs much anyway. So for me, it was
Yeah.
fine. Um, but the milk and the cheese, you know, I think many
The
vegans have
dairy.
this issue.
Yeah.
The dairy this is the problem, you know. You
Yeah.
like the nice cheese and the milk, and I drank a lot of milk actually. I mean, I would have like 1 cup of milk every day, like just by itself.
Oh,
I don't think
wow.
that a lot of people do that. Like that's
Yeah.
what I was doing. So I
Wow.
really liked it. Okay.
Wow.
Um, and I was like, no, I cannot do this. And then, you know, eventually I found out more and more and more. And I was like, okay, actually, they're not being treated very kindly in the dairy industry either. So it's not really right just because I like the taste or whatever that they should suffer because of this, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So I tried to cut out dairy, but I really struggled with it. I found it very difficult, especially cheese. I mean, milk, I started to get used to, but then also there weren't really any good alternatives at the time, and they didn't really taste the same way. And
Hmm.
so I went back to drinking milk.
Uh-huh.
And then when I moved to Greece, where they don't really have a lot of good cheeses. I mean, they have a few Greek cheeses, but they don't have, you know, like where I grew up in Germany, you have Italian cheeses, you have French
The
cheeses, you
French
can find
ones, yeah.
everything. Yeah.
The Swiss ones,
And
yeah.
the Swiss ones, exactly. So, and here
Mm.
you cannot really get them that easily. So I was like, okay, I'm not eating them, and I don't really like the Greek cheeses, so maybe I should give it another try. And then I lived right across the first vegan market, the mini market
Wow.
here in Greece. And I was like, okay, let me check
Wow.
them out. And I went and I saw the kind of products they had. And then we ran into some people there that said to watch Cowspiracy,
Yeah.
and then I was vegan after that. So it was a
Those,
very long process. But then, I mean, now it's like, okay, I still don't think there's a milk that, like a dairy alternative that I really like, that I really enjoy. They're kind of, most of them are very watery and whatever, but like, it's not a, there's no discussion anymore. Like I wouldn't go back to drinking milk or eating cheese.
because now it's an ethical discussion. It's an
Yeah,
ethical, cruelty-free suffering discussion
yeah,
that you are, making that connection. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah,
Totally.
so
Yeah.
it took many years, but
Me
finally, so
too.
if anybody thinks they cannot go vegan, you absolutely can, because I also didn't think I could, and here I am, and I'm super convinced that I will remain vegan, and I'm perfectly fine with it. So, but
You're
yeah, it took
thriving.
many
You're
years.
thriving.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. No, no, and for me too, it took me many years. The whole thing about, my family was nervous about me saying I was vegetarian. So when I wasn't with them, I wouldn't eat the standard diet. And then when I was with them, I would eat the standard diet.
Yeah.
And because I just didn't like all of that pressure, all of that like feeling so what is the word? Like the tension or the disagreement about it. I just wasn't, I guess, mature enough to handle that particular issue at the time. And then, I mean, just like yourself, I gave up meat later on for health reasons and in terms of land animals, but I was still pescatarian, vegetarian, dipping in and out of those foods. And yeah, and then, for me, it was, hey, once I realized there were actually vegan restaurants out there, I'm like, hey, I have no excuse.
Yeah.
I have no excuse when I'm traveling, because my thing was when I was traveling, I just couldn't figure out how to keep it up. And so I can totally relate to you. And I'm glad we're talking about, getting into travel. But before we get into travel, I really love the name that you chose for your handle, for your page, Lemons and Luggage. And I would super love for you to share with us how you came up with that cool name.
Well, thank you. I just, actually it was I needed a name, and I was brainstorming with my sister for, I think, for 2, 3 days. We were thinking about different names, and I wanted to combine veganism and travel. And so I don't know, at some point, I think my sister came up with it. I'm not sure. And we're like, okay, so the lemons are it's a vegan
Yeah.
food product. It's not
Yeah.
like you eat lemons like this, but okay, it's something vegan. And then the luggage for traveling. So there wasn't really a very deep thought process behind it. It was just like, okay, those two things are like my main interests. And
Cool.
yeah, so nothing really too exciting there, but
Yeah, I
I'm glad
love
you like
it.
it. Thank
I
you.
love it. I love it. And lemons are such a bright yellow color, and I
Yeah,
just love yellow. It's just so like high vibrations, really.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a very happy color. I also love
Yeah.
yellow, definitely.
Yeah,
But yeah,
exactly.
it was just that. So
Cool, cool. Well, thanks to you and your sister, you guys came up with a great name. And so let's move over to the travel topic, your travel writing, your content creation. How did that come about for you?
Um, you know, I also always kind of wrote, I mean, when the internet started, I think we're both a bit older than some of the other people
Oh,
that
yeah.
are out there.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
I
I
mean, I
am
grew
for
up without
sure.
internet.
Me
So I
too. Me
started
too.
using the internet when I was just finishing high school, like those last few months or whatever. Then we
Yeah.
got internet. So,
Like in the
but
80s. Yeah.
well, no, in the 80s there we didn't have any internet yet. For me, it was late 90s actually
Yeah.
that
Okay.
we
Okay.
got a computer and internet. I mean the internet
Yeah.
existed before, but we didn't have any internet access at home. So,
That's true. You're right. It was the mid 90s in terms of like the World Wide Web type of a thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
So when I discovered it and I was like, oh wow, there are these things like I think there were things like for online diaries and stuff like this. I don't
Oh,
remember anymore the names. There are
cool.
so many different websites where you
Yeah.
could just, write down your thoughts and all that stuff. So I
Nice.
always liked that. And I went
Nice.
back and forth with different blogs. But then when I became vegan, I think that was actually the catalyst where I was like, wow, I want to write about this, and I want to write about traveling as a vegan and share this,
Awesome.
share whatever I find, like where can you go and find vegan food, like all of this kind of information. And yeah, that's why I decided to. So the writing was always kind of there, but then
Yeah.
the veganism kind of gave me a real direction to take with the writing for the blog.
Yeah. That's cool. Well, I love like the way you bring in the whole responsibility as well. So we could talk about that too, because that's a big part of your messages, your content. So if you could talk to us a little bit about like the whole responsible travel aspect, that
Yeah,
would be
sure.
cool.
For me, it's really, I mean, again, like I feel like I can't be vegan because the animals are suffering, and then I participate in other actions where other beings suffer. So, for me, it has to be a very holistic approach. Like everything is there. Like there are these people that only care about animal rights and they ignore everything else. But that doesn't really make sense to me. I mean, if we're vegan because we don't want animals to be treated worse than humans, then we also cannot have some humans being treated worse than other humans. And if we care about the environment and want to preserve the planet for the animals and for other humans, we also need to be careful and be more sustainable in our approach. So it's the same for travel. I think that, I mean, we've seen now, especially with the pandemic, that travel can cause some issues. And when there was no travel for several months, we saw the positive impact on the environment. And I
Yes.
really think that all of this should be connected. We don't have our planet is not an infinite place where there are resources forever and ever. We need to be careful with how we're using the resources on this planet. And that's why I think responsible travel is important. And also because of the people that we encounter when we travel. We don't go to empty places. There are people who live there, and they shouldn't just be a product to us. Oh, I'm traveling to this interesting location and there are these interesting locals there that I'm going to look at. No, I mean, you should also give something to them. You should give back because you're going into their place. You're looking at their country, their city, their whatever, and you should also leave something positive behind and not just destruction, which happens very often, unfortunately, especially in these over tourist, places like Venice, Barcelona, where a lot of the people don't even want tourists anymore because it has become
No,
so much.
no.
So I think it's really, really important to travel responsibly and not just see it as, oh, I want to go on my 2-week vacation and I don't care about anything else. I understand that people who work for a whole year and they save up the money to go on their vacation. I understand that you don't have the mind to analyze everything that you do, but you really need to keep in mind that there is another person on the other side as well. It's not just you traveling there. There's also people who live there.
Yeah, and I mean, I love the way you bring it down to, compassion and respect. In other words, respecting their privacy, for example. And I read your blog where you're talking about like hidden gems and people just kind of going into these, more private, intimate places, kind of that are hidden away, basically. And it reminded me one time I was in Mallorca and someone was telling me about these basically hidden beaches. And he said to me, but only locals go there. And you usually have to like walk quite a distance and then you get to these amazing beaches. And I thought, wow, well, I personally didn't try to get to them. I just went to I just went to the like, the big ones, right, where everyone else was. But it's an example of what you're saying. Like locals like to have their own little hidden gems too, that kind of privacy, where, they can have their little picnics and their families, etc. And like even like sometimes when I've traveled in the past, because obviously nowadays we're not doing it, but it's like, well, do you take a photo of someone in their own private moments or not? I mean, I personally try to stay very discreet because I am a very curious person. If I see something interesting, I do want to take a photo. But I think like your point is really relevant to that in terms of, well, do we really have the right to just take a photo of anyone and anything? I mean, yeah, I guess if they're in the public eye, then they're basically giving up maybe their privacy in that sense. But I do have to stop and pause about that, to be honest with you. And I think that's a part of what you're getting at, like in terms of, being responsible when we travel.
Definitely, and I think this aspect about photography, this is a huge thing. I mean, now we haven't been traveling a lot. I mean, here in Europe, travel opened up about 3 months ago, so
Yeah.
I could travel, but I'm still being a bit careful and observing the situation. But it has allowed me to, take some online courses, photography courses. And I remember watching one guy doing a presentation on photography, travel photography specifically, and he was talking about how you can take photos of the locals without them noticing. And it was just so gross. The idea that, you
Whoa.
know, if you just sit there in an alley in Morocco, you just start taking the photos, and then when they walk through the picture, they might not even notice, because if you walk up to them and take a picture, then they're not going to like it. And once I was in this place and there were children and they didn't want to have their photos taken, but then I gave them the camera and they took the photos of their friends for me. So this was a sneaky way I got photos of these local children. And I was like, wow. I mean, because at the same time, we see all these people who are talking about their privacy on social media, people that don't have a profile picture on their Facebook, they put a fake name on Facebook or on Twitter or whatever. You know, all these people trying to protect their own privacy, but then all of a sudden, other people don't have a right to their privacy. Like a person in Morocco or in Kenya or in India doesn't have a right to the same privacy that these people want, because it's not like you would want somebody else to take photos of your children somewhere. I mean,
I
you would
think
get
that is
into trouble if you did
so,
that.
that is so sensitive. Honestly, that is such a sensitive topic. And, I really like, how you put it in your blog about, like colonialism, like there's a little bit of that, or like the explorer, like, hey,
Yes.
we landed here, and,
Yeah, yeah.
and we discovered this place, therefore we need to like report on this place and like show the world, all of the, like you say, hidden gems. And I was like, oh my gosh, I had not thought of it like that.
Yeah, it has a lot of this kind of mentality that, oh, here are 10 hidden gems. And I'm not saying there's something wrong with going
No.
to places that are not as frequented by tourists. And again, because there are some places that get too many tourists, they don't want tourists anymore. So it's better to seek out places that don't get a lot of tourism and that might benefit from it. But
Good
to
point.
make it look like, oh my God, here are all these hidden gems. Well, maybe the locals know about this place, so maybe
They
you
do.
didn't discover a hidden gem the same way that Columbus didn't discover anything, you know,
I
he just
I was trying not to trying not to mention his name because here, yeah, in certain parts of the world in the last 6 months, he has had a lot of trouble. Oh yeah,
but yeah,
yeah,
I mean, it's it's something that these places exist. Just because you haven't heard of them before doesn't mean they are hidden. It doesn't
exactly,
mean that and even if they were hidden, that wouldn't necessarily make them better or worse in terms of going and visiting them. Like you said,
right.
if there are beaches that only the locals go to, nice. Probably those are really nice beaches. They're probably better than all the overpacked
Yeah,
beaches, that,
probably,
especially in Mallorca.
probably yes.
But it's all about being mindful about these things. Like, I'm not saying people shouldn't go to a hidden gem or whatever, but being mindful of what they label it, why they label it that way. Is it really hidden, or is it actually a very normal place? Is it maybe a local destination that a lot of
Exactly.
tourists go to? I mean, I live here in Greece, and there are some islands that are super popular with everyone, like Santorini, Mykonos, and these places that everybody goes to.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there are other islands that people are like, oh, these are the hidden gems, but they're not that hidden because actually a lot of Greek tourists go there, so they're
Exactly.
not really hidden.
Exactly.
So it's
Hmm.
more about having all of these things in mind, and just, you know, especially as vegans, I just feel that we should be concerned with the whole picture, the big picture of what's going on, and looking at everything. And that doesn't mean that you're a bad person if you go to Venice where there's a lot of tourists, but you're also not a bad person if you go somewhere that doesn't have a lot of tourists. But it also doesn't make you a better person. And I feel that sometimes there's this elitism that, even in veganism also, I'm the better vegan, this person is not as good of a vegan, and this person is, I mean, there's,
Oh
and
yeah,
it's
I
not
made
helpful.
like I made so many videos on that. I'll probably get a message from someone soon saying, "Hey, could you stop talking about that?" No, I know, right? Like, the cooked vegan, the junk food vegan, the raw vegan, the whole food vegan, etc. The no oil vegan. Like there's so much, so many divisions and so many
Yeah,
hierarchies and categories. It's I don't know. I guess it's natural. That's just probably human behavior.
probably, yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, I just want people to think a little bit more about certain things and then making their own decisions. I mean, that's fine. You can still go wherever you want to go. You can still go to the very busy places or the less busy places, but just be aware that certain terms are a bit strange, like the hidden gem, and just think about things and then come to your own conclusions. I'm not telling anybody what to think, but
Right. Right.
I think that it's important to see the world as a whole and yeah,
But
ask
that's good
ourselves, do we
food.
need to do it like this, or are there other ways of doing things?
Mhm. No, but that's good food for thought, though. Like, to be compassionate and respectful and not just like kind of go in and trample on, what the locals have created and oftentimes for themselves. So
Yeah.
definitely it's a great perspective. And of course, sustainability, which we as vegans often are very, very in tune with as well.
Yeah, definitely. And again, I think that now there are so many discussions now. Should we travel? Should we not travel? I mean, I know that you in the US, you don't really have that many options to travel right now. We
No,
do.
no, nobody wants us in Europe. I
Yeah,
mean,
no.
I hope they want us soon, but at the moment they're like, no, 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 we don't want you guys.
And wait for your election results. It
Oh,
it always
I didn't
depends.
even think about that in terms of like a
Well,
deciding factor. Oh dear. Oh
I
dear.
think that there are so many things that play
Oh,
into it, right? So I know that a lot of people with
politics.
dual citizenship, they prefer not to travel on their American passports. I have a friend who's a dual Jamaican US citizen, and she said that when Bush was president, she would only travel on her Jamaican passport, even though in some places she would have to get a visa. But she was like, no, going somewhere as an American, like you just get so much like negative feedback from people. So it's just like, no.
No, and
But
and
yeah,
yeah, I personally had that experience when I was a student because I don't want to go. I can tell you offline, but it was there was a lot of let's just say like some violence that was going on, and they were targeting Americans. And I would hide my passport, like when I was at the train station or an airport or something. I would hide it, like make sure it wasn't visible,
yeah,
because you
yeah,
just never know. Yeah. But so
yeah.
so we have the next topic. By the way, guys, anyone who's joining live, thanks so much for joining, and let us know in the comments, please, where you're joining from. That's always cool. And also, please put your questions down in the comment section. That would be great as well for Nina. And so, Nina, our next point that we wanted to cover is some of the recent changes you've seen in the vegan world. Again, I know we're not traveling much, but is there anything you've seen recently in the last, little while in terms of the vegan world that you would want to mention?
I think that we're seeing exactly what we just mentioned, that people are becoming more conscious of the overall state of the world, and that more and more vegans are luckily finally realizing that we cannot just promote one issue. We cannot just focus on animal rights. There are a lot of other issues in the world, and if we only tackle one subject, I mean, you can focus on the thing that you're focusing on. Obviously, if you're an animal rights advocate, that's your main thing. But there are other issues, and it's always best to work together and connect with other social justice movements to get an overall solution to some of the, because the root cause of all these issues that we have are still the same things. That some think they're better than others, right? Whether it's humans thinking they're better than animals or other groups thinking they're better than other groups. And this is the main problem. This is the root cause of all of these issues that we have. So it's best to work together and acknowledge other issues and not start to be like, there are so many vegans out there saying, yeah, but animals suffer more than any other group. And it's like, well, this is not really helpful. It's not helping anybody. Just because you only focus on the animals isn't going to make all of the problems go away. So I think that we're seeing a lot more people coming together a lot more, different groups advocating for different things. So that's a good thing. Um, and yeah, in general, I mean, the whole Oatly thing, I don't know if you heard about that. I think that while some of the things are a bit superficial, I see some of the criticism and I'm like, okay, if you go a bit deeper, you can also criticize other companies and not just this one specific brand. But at the same time, I'm happy that at least people are thinking about these things and they are making the connection and they're not like, well, I don't care. As long as it's vegan, I'm going to buy it. Which I'm not saying everybody should boycott certain brands necessarily, but I like the thought process that at least people are thinking about it and they're like, well, do I want to give my money to this company or do I not want to? And if a company is vegan, does that automatically mean that I have to support them? I saw today somebody in my stories posted something about a restaurant, a vegan restaurant, I believe. I don't know which city, some American city, where there were reports of sexual violence from the owner or something. And this person was also saying, just because I'm vegan doesn't mean I should support vegan restaurants. It's better to support other restaurants if there are problems. So I think we're waking up to the fact that just vegan isn't enough and it doesn't make somebody perfect. And we're seeing things with, we're looking at it from different angles. And I think that's a good thing. I think on the one hand, yes, it can create more of these divisions that we mentioned before, but I also think that in general, it can help bring humanity closer together because we're looking at things that even if it doesn't affect me personally, maybe this specific thing affects somebody else and I should also care about this. And I'm quite hopeful with this because I'm seeing in the last few months that people are going more in that direction.
I am so glad you brought that up because recently I've seen the word intersectionality used quite a lot. And that is what you were talking about in the mainly in the first half of what you just shared with us. And so I'm really super happy that you brought that up because that was not a concept that I had been hearing. Well, I wasn't always big on social media before, but a concept that I was really hearing a lot about. And now I see lots of vegans, identify themselves as intersectionality, be it for gender or, cultural background or, whatever the case might be. And so they're, like you say, they're addressing, inequalities and human rights issues, et cetera, along with veganism.
Yes.
And so I think, like you said, I think it's super powerful, like to have that, collaboration and combination of goals and messages and, I think you can touch more areas that are in need of attention, like you're saying, through the collaboration, obviously, but this whole concept of, everything is connected, everything is connected. It's not just our health, it's also our animals, our planet. And of course, when we get back to the human, inequalities and things like that. So I really like that you've observed that as one, the one of the big changes because I'm seeing it more and more.
Yeah, definitely. I think that it's something that, and we need it because we need to have some sort of goal, I believe, that we're working towards, right? It's not just, oh, I'm just vegan and that's it. I think that we need to have some sort of vision for the future. What kind of world do we want to live in? Is it enough if everything is vegan, but people are still being exploited to make our clothes or to pick the fruit that we're eating that are then vegan, but there are still other inequalities that exist. And I think that I would hope that most vegans sooner or later will understand that the veganism alone is not enough and that we need more, that we need complete liberation of all beings and the planet and to get to a point where where this would even be unthinkable, because otherwise you can easily replace one group with another group. You know, you stop exploiting one group and it moves on to the next group. I mean, then you have people fighting amongst each other, you know, like immigrants that have always been there, have always been discriminated against. Then there's new refugees coming, and sometimes immigrants start to talk bad about some of the refugees because they're
Oh
even on a
no.
lower level of the hierarchy, right? Something that I'm observing a lot in Europe, for example.
Oh my
And
gosh.
you can easily replace these groups if you're not tackling the real issues. So I think our issue should be, our vision should be a place, a world where there's absolutely no form of exploitation and discrimination. And yeah, this we need this intersectional approach for that, definitely.
Yeah, and um that's a part of why I wanted to have these lives to shine a light on, for me, the fact that for me veganism is not just diet. It's not just what we're eating and what's on our plate. There's so many other aspects, and I know I go on and on about, clothing, skincare, furnishings, et cetera. But I really want to expand that also, to, like you're saying, other areas. The whole human rights aspects, and I know some of that came across through the fashion person that I
Yeah.
had on, and how you need fair trade. We don't want exploitation of the workers in the factories, et cetera. And a lot of that really just goes unnoticed by a lot of us. We don't really think about, well, where did this clothing come from, and how are the employees treated, et cetera. So that's just one example of what you're talking about. So I think that's super cool too. That there's more attention on it now,
Yeah.
and much needed. Yeah.
And I think it also, I mean, even if somebody only cares about animals, and those people do exist, we have to acknowledge that. I wish they would care about other things as well, but some only care about the animals. But also to think about, if workers are treated poorly in certain places, how do you think these people are going to treat animals in their daily interactions? If I'm being treated in such a horrible way at my factory where I'm producing clothes for, H&M and other companies, how much of my humanity can I really keep intact, and how am I going to treat animals? And if I'm hungry and I just got my poor salary, and like I'm just going to eat the cheapest thing that I find, and if there's a stray dog on the street, I'm not going to be able to help this dog. And I mean, this also has an impact on animals, a direct impact, especially when we talk about travel again. There are people that go, oh, they travel to all these places, and oh, how the people treat the animals in those places, it's so horrible. And well, you know that the standard of living for those people is also much lower, and the way that they are treated by those higher up in the social hierarchy is also something to be criticized. And it's natural then that if you're not being, because I think that some people are expecting the opposite, kind of like, oh, somebody who's not treated well should also know how it feels and shouldn't
Mm.
treat another
Not
being poorly. But it's
necessarily.
not exactly, it's not,
It's like
it
they
can be
say.
so. No, go ahead, go ahead.
No, sorry. I was just gonna say, it's like they say, people who are abused end up abusing others.
Exactly,
That's
exactly.
what you're getting at. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and they know that, for example, people who abuse animals, very often they will also start abusing humans later
It
on. I mean, these
starts a
are
lot of
things that,
times. It
yeah.
starts with
Hmm.
animals. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're making me think too of the horrible conditions that humans are experiencing in the animal food supply chain, in terms of the slaughterhouses, that whole industry.
Yes.
And also the trauma, I guess, that they are experiencing just through the cruel behavior and treatment of the animals, in
Yeah.
those houses, in those slaughterhouses. So that's also suffering and cruelty for the humans who are dealing with this whole animal supply chain.
Exactly. And that's something where, for example, non-vegans don't really, I mean, if they don't care about the animals, it's one thing, but they also don't consider the psychological damage to people that work in slaughterhouses. My father lived in the US for a few months when I was a child. And he, at some point, because, for an immigrant who didn't speak any English, he had to get work in a slaughterhouse. And he also became vegetarian after that for a long time. He didn't stick to it because it was a different time.
Era,
He was a
different
different
time.
generation.
Yeah, yeah.
But in the beginning, yes, for many months he couldn't eat meat. He couldn't stand it. He was like, no, it's so horrible what goes on there. I cannot. It's not possible. And these are the people that have to work in these places, right? I mean, now we had some cases in Europe that here during COVID, even when most travel was forbidden, they were still bringing slaughterhouse workers, but also fruit pickers from Romania, Bulgaria, Eastern and Southeastern Europe, who are usually being used as workers in these industries. They were
Wow.
still bringing them in, even though there wasn't supposed to be any travel. They did not have any protection. There were a lot of cases of slaughterhouses where there were extreme numbers of infections
Yeah,
among the workers.
I've heard
So
that.
this is also happening. It's not so when somebody says, "Ah, you vegans, you only care about the animals." No, there's more to it. It's the whole system that is based on exploitation because it only wants eternal growth, right? We need to grow, grow, grow. We need to produce more and more and more. And this is just not sustainable. And everybody's suffering, whether it's animals, the environment, or humans.
Totally. And I'm so glad you brought up those concrete examples. And specifically in this, like you're saying, this global time that we're in, where they would even make an exception to the travel restrictions
Yeah,
just to keep up this, this cycle, this money machine, basically,
yeah,
find people to do what they want them to do. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
And
Wow.
without caring about those people's health, I mean, it's really it's disheartening. So I'm hoping that more and more vegans wake up to these things, and non-vegans as well, because we
Yes,
need
yes.
everybody, right? We need everybody to
Yeah, and
work
we're
on
all
these.
in it together, to be honest with
Yeah,
you. And there's so many more people, I'm finding who are going flexitarian as well. So hopefully that's a gateway, like an eye opener for them in terms of, well, what happens with the animal products that they do eat certain number of days during the week. How did those products get on their plate? The
yeah.
whole kind of life cycle and the whole supply chain as well. So I agree with you. Like it's everyone. It's not just vegans who need to be more
And
aware.
And I mean, you and I, we can say from experience that it can take longer, right?
It
So
is.
I wouldn't like to dismiss people who don't feel ready yet. I struggle sometimes also when I see people have so much more information than I used to have, and
Yeah.
still they don't make the connection. But at the same time, it can happen to people when they're, I don't know, they could be 50, 60, 70 years old and they could still at some
Yes.
point realize and go vegan. So I'm hopeful. I'm
It's never
optimistic.
too late. Yeah, I mean, in terms of like what you're saying, everyone's on their own personal timeline, their own journey. And for me, it's never too late. I mean, I just try to always leave the door open.
Yeah.
Whenever they're ready to walk in, I'm here. I'm here for them. So, and like you said, it took me a very long time for a multitude of reasons. So I can definitely relate to people who are struggling. Although I do like your point that nowadays there's just so much information out there, so many more products than, when I was trying to figure stuff out. And so I can definitely see your point too. Like nowadays, it's so much easier. All the documentaries that are out. And after this, I'll be speaking with the person who's heading up the Vegan Film Festival this month. So those documentaries and films will hopefully also, open more eyes because I know a lot of people pay attention to a lot of documentaries and films. So hopefully that work will move us forward and away from the cruelty, hopefully.
Yeah, I hope
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. So we have 15 minutes left. So I
Okay.
wanted to talk about naysayers. How do you handle like critics and naysayers in terms of, oh my gosh, you're vegan, I could never do that. Oh my gosh, you're not getting enough protein. Oh my gosh, this, that, and the next. How do you handle those types of comments from people?
To be honest, I'm managing more and more to completely ignore things like that.
Good.
I,
Good.
I'm not I'm not the same person that I was when I was 17, where I thought I could convince everybody and like I'm gonna convince everybody that my opinions on everything are correct. I prefer to surround myself with people who already understand some of the basic concepts that I'm interested in. When it's at work and things like that, when people, it's usually jokes. It's not really that people are saying things like, oh, this is not possible and how and your protein. Usually they make jokes like, oh, you cannot eat this because you're vegan. And usually I'll just make a mean comment, I think, to be honest. I can be quite yeah, I can be a bit mean when I need to be. So I shut them up right away, and that's it.
Well, I think because their intentions are not very pure either.
Exactly.
Like they're coming, they're like, punching you in the face. So it's kind of like, well, what do you do? Do you defend yourself or not?
And I don't
Or
have the energy for this. I mean, I feel that as we get older, we become more like, okay, no, I would much rather use that energy to, I don't know, write a new good blog post or something and inform those people who are interested because they're already clicking. So they have some sort of interest in the subject. I'd much rather put that energy into those people than waste it on people who are just trying to be funny or who are, I mean, no, for me it's too much energy.
that is so cool that you say that because I've recently changed my approach with hashtags, and I have decided that I don't want to kind of like go out there looking for people who are kind of like not quite sure what they
Okay.
want out of life. And so the hashtags that I've been choosing recently are very specific to people who are already on board,
Hmm.
and who might just, just be looking for extra information. So I can
Okay.
definitely understand your point. Like, and for me, what one of the approaches that I've taken too is just lead by example. I live my life.
Hmm.
I'm not going to go to try to like shove it down anyone's throat. I live my life. When they're curious, they come and ask me, and that has happened before. And I tell them whatever I know, and I try to share with them what I know, and I encourage them, and I tell them how great I feel and how, we're reducing the cruelty for our animals and our planet. So I just kind of share my point of view. But you're right. Like, to try to convince someone who's not ready, it's super hard.
And I think for me it wouldn't have worked also if somebody had told me back then, oh no, but you should go vegan. I think that I understand that some people have that energy, and that's great. If you have the energy to go and convince people, and I think then the best approach is probably to create these documentaries and things like that, like you said. But I personally don't have that energy to go and have these discussions where it just doesn't seem like the other person is ready. Like you said, if they're not ready, they're going to hear something different. They're not going to hear what it's like this thing. There's this joke that vegans always bring up that they're vegan. And it's, if it feels like that's what they hear because that's what they want to hear. Because in my own experience and from whatever I know from people that I know who are vegan, it's kind of the opposite, right? It's like you'll go somewhere and the only reason you'll mention that you're vegan is because you just want to make sure that there are some vegan options for you, right, at the party or something. And then people will be like, oh my God, why did you have to bring up that you're vegan? Or they're going to be like, you're vegan? Why? For what reason? And then you have to go and explain yourself. And then later it turns into, oh, this vegan was preaching to me. No, I was just minding my own business and trying to find if there's more than a salad here. And then you confronted me about being vegan. Like, I don't walk up to somebody and say, why are you eating meat? or why do you
No,
do this, or why are
no,
you smoking? I mean, we
no,
don't do these
no,
things. So
no. It's true. You're so right. I love the way you described it because I can really relate to it. I can really
it's
like
what
relate to
happens,
it.
right?
It's incredible. And those memes are so accurate. Like they go around, and like what you're saying, well, why you're telling everyone you're vegan. It's like the thing about, well, this is a vegan hot dog. And then you say, well, why do you have to say it's a vegan hot dog?
Yeah.
And then if you say, well,
Yeah.
if it's a hot, you say, oh, it's a hot dog. And then say, well, I thought you were vegan. What are you doing eating? So,
Exactly.
so it's like you can't win for losing.
Exactly,
It's
exactly. Because
incredible.
those people hear what they want to hear, and that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, no, there's no point in telling them anything because what they hear is not, they make a joke and you reply to them and you're like, no, but I'm vegan because of this. They don't hear, oh, I made a bad joke and the person is now explaining to me why they're vegan.
No,
They hear a vegan preaching to them, and this doesn't work.
it
It's not going to
doesn't.
do anything.
It doesn't. So we have 9 minutes left. So I want
Okay.
to I'm gonna skip over the newbies for a second because I want you to tell us, please, what are your current and future offerings and how best can people contact you and collaborate with you?
Well, before we were able to travel, I was creating mainly vegan travel guides, mainly here in Europe, mainly cities. So now I'm gonna see how that changes when I personally feel ready to travel again. But that's usually the main thing, which you can find on my website, lemonsandluggage.com, where there are vegan city guides. Also, because I've been living in Greece for many years, there's a vegan Greece guide. So it's not just Athens or just one or two other places, but there's a general guide to how you can manage to be vegan in Greece because it's not as easy as some people think. So that's a big part of what I do. And then other travel topics, like you said, also the hidden gems post that I made recently. But yeah, those are the things that are on the website. So you can find them there at lemonsandluggage.com. Then you can definitely follow me on Instagram, where I'm doing more. I've been introducing people to a lot of other accounts that I find inspiring because I see a lot of people are very disillusioned with social media and Instagram in particular. I've seen so many people posting, I'm not happy on Instagram anymore. It's just frustrating to go here. I'm not going through my feed anymore. And I was like, okay, a solution to this is actually to follow better accounts and unfollow the ones that you don't like, right? So I've been sharing those. And okay, I've been cooking a lot because I can't travel and I'm not going to restaurants really. So I also have some recipe posts on my Instagram. And yeah, that's also at Lemons and Luggage for people who want to follow along. And other articles that I'm posting, it always depends whenever, if I get, if somebody commissions an article, then I'm writing it for other publications as well. But those come in, without me. I don't really know. I don't have any big plans for big articles that are coming out. That's always very spontaneous when I publish something.
Cool, cool. Um, so we have 6 minutes. And the best place, just once again, the best place for people to contact you.
The best place for people to contact me, definitely my email address, nina@lemonsandluggage.com. And
Great.
through the website. There's also, you can find it on the website in the About part. So if people haven't written it down, but it's also in my Instagram account in the profile. If you click on email, that's also the email address that would go to.
Great. Okay. So, what would be some of your advice for new vegans or vegan curious people in terms of, how to kind of get them started on the right foot? What are some of the, suggestions that you make to people who are curious or trying to start their journey?
I think the best thing is to cut out all the stuff that you don't like that much anyway. I don't think there needs to be like a hierarchy. Oh, you need to quit eating meat first before you quit fish, and then dairy, and then honey, or whatever you already don't like that much. If you don't like eggs, if you eat them once or twice a year, just be done with eggs. And it's going to be easier to focus on the eggs, and then whatever else you don't like. I think it's really important to make it as easy as possible for yourself, and not get caught up in like, oh, there needs to be a specific order in which I have to go vegan. I think it's whatever is easiest for you, do it that way. And if that means only being vegan once a week, like a lot of people have these things with the meatless Monday and this stuff.
I've seen, yeah.
It's not something that I would personally do, I think, but I do believe that there are people for whom that's very helpful. And so
It's
I
a
think
start.
everybody
It's a
needs,
start. Yeah.
exactly. Everybody needs to see what's best for them. It doesn't really make sense to say, oh, this worked for me, so it's going to work for you as well. Because that can be very frustrating, and then people might stop being vegan. And my partner, for example, went vegan from one day to the next. Like, I had already been
Wow.
vegan for a year. He was thinking about it, but I mean, the one day he was still eating meat and dairy and everything, and the next day was like, okay, that's it. I'm vegan now. But I think that's not for everybody. So I think it's very important to be honest with yourself. If you're interested in becoming vegan, think about why, because that's going to keep you motivated when you know, when you're craving something that you've always eaten and you're like, oh, but I need to eat this. Remember
Find your
why.
why. Find your
Yeah,
why. Oh,
definitely.
I am so happy you said that. Yes.
And then find the easiest way for you, the way that is sustainable for you. If it's increasing the vegan days per week, if it's just cutting out specific things first, and then because also for me it was gradual, right? As I mentioned in the beginning. So maybe, you're going to cut out everything else, and the last thing that's missing is, I don't know, cheese. You're already not drinking milk, but cheese is the only dairy product that you can't get out of your system. Then leave it for last, but eventually you will get there. I'm certain that everybody can do it if they really want to, if they're really interested, as long as they find their own best approach.
Yeah, and thankfully there are more, plant options like you're saying, for milks and cheeses and eggs and things like that. So thankfully, the market is making it a bit easier. We only have a minute and 50 seconds. It's giving me a countdown. I want to thank you so much, Nina, for sharing all of your experience and your expertise with us. I really, really want to thank you for that. And I want to leave this last minute for anything else you want to say to us.
Thank you so much for having me, first of all. It was really, really nice, and I hope that it was helpful for some people who watched it. For me, the only thing I really want to say is that everybody should think about their overall attitude towards consumption and what they're buying. It's not just veganism, it's not just the clothes that you buy. There's everything goes hand in hand. And I think that's the most important thing, to realize that it's about more than just these small things. And once you have the big picture, it becomes much easier to find the right way that you want to do your own part. And I think that everybody can do something to make the world a little bit better than it was yesterday.
Okay, now my heart is just jumping for joy. Thank you so much for ending us on that high note, high vibrations, and the we can do it attitude. We can all do it. We're all different, but we all have something to contribute. So I really appreciate you ending on that high note. And I'm gonna save it because we only have 18 seconds left. So thank you so much,
Okay.
Nina, and take good care and have a great week. And we'll be in
You
touch.
too. Bye
Take care. Thank
bye.
you
Thank
so
you.
much. Bye bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.